So my name's Josh Pallas and I am so privileged to be the President of the New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties in this, our 60th year of operation. I'm so pleased to be able to introduce this video, which is only happening thanks to some of our generous donors, to ensure that we're able to record the history of what we've done over these fantastic 60 years. So that in 60 years' time, when we're recording another video like this, we can look back on the first 60 years of our operations and the contributions that we made to society and politics and the people behind those stories and the work that we did.
There weren't too many choices around if you wanted to join an organisation that's going to agitate for good things. I joined the Labor Party and the Council for Civil Liberties. That was about all that was really of any particular interest to me, and I'm still a member of each.
Whenever we got arrested, we either gave a false name and disappeared, or Civil Liberties got involved.
I came to Civil Liberties from a radical background. I was radical as a student, and that was mainly through the ages of the radical Catholic Newman Society, which really had its nose into many of the hot issues of the time.
I first became involved with the Council for Civil Liberties in the 1980s. It probably would have been 1988.
Well, I first became involved in CCL in about 1993.
But I always was appalled at the fact that abortion had not been decriminalised in New South Wales.
The first time I was arrested was during the Gurindji. There was a very big Gurindji protest in, I think it was July 1970. And thousands of people, I think it began at Wynyard and marched down George Street, and the police were very violent, and about 30 people, I think, or even more, got arrested that day.
I was full of ideas, particularly about issues to do with privacy, the dignity of the individual. And what I really loved about the Council for Civil Liberties is it was a very principled organisation.
I had to do a university placement in 2014, and I wanted to go to the Human Rights Law Centre or the Public Interest Advocacy Centre, and I didn't even know that this thing called the New South Wales Council for Civil Liberties existed. And I was so despondent the day that my placement form came back.
I came back with that sort of romantic notion of what a great country Australia could be and how I could make a difference. You know, what rubbish, you know, what exalted nonsense, but how that you feel that you can make a difference in law.
I can remember when I was first around the Sydney Push, which is 1968, and friends, in particular one friend, Darcy Waters, telling me about there being this party at King's Cross.
I think it started in '63. It started with a party up the cross. There were a number of people there, including Ken Buckley, who became a professor later on at Sydney University and remained a stalwart of CCL together with his wife Berenice Buckley. And they were there, and the cops came in and busted up the party. Now there are said to be some homosexuals at the party, and they really dealt with them very roughly. They really smashed up the party. And the thing that really got people's goat was they took their badges off when they came in, so they couldn't be identified. And that was the beginning of people getting interested in really feeling the need for civil liberties.
Where the cops were totally out of control, and it was an extraordinarily authoritarian government that took great pleasure in banning books and tolerating the cops beating up demonstrators.
And so there were endless demonstrations. You could get thousands of university students out onto City Road in a few hours around issues back then, and then they would march down and take possession of the streets and push their way in.
I found it incredible that these sort of, in those days, quite serious, sober men in suits and ties would come along and represent us. And then later, especially during the anti-apartheid activity, which was a bit later, I really got to know the people that came and represented us.
You have to go in and fight for every human being's rights. That's the way human rights work, and civil liberties. If one person loses them, everybody loses them. And unfortunately, that means often I and other people running the organisation have been in the position where we've had to go out and fight the argument over the principle, even though the person who might be subject of a criminal finding is absolutely abhorrent. The principle's too important, and if one person loses their rights, we all lose our rights.
Freedom from being detained not by a court but by a government administrative process is one of the most fundamental freedoms and the most important freedom to protect. Australia, through its immigration mandatory detention policy, has just trashed its observance of that human right.
And then I met up with a bloke called Ken Haller, who was a prominent civil libertarian, actually got a MBE, or not MBE, but an Order for Australia for Services for Civil Liberties. And he was there, Paul Steen was there, Ken Shedbolt was there, Jeff Miles was there.
The most inspiring, smart, clever people I'd ever really come across, including John himself. And I just felt passionately myself that marriage equality had to come. And I remember the beginning of 2017 when we had the Gay Mardi Gras and I was marching with New South Wales young lawyers in favour of marriage equality. Nobody had a dream it would even happen that year, but it did.
One of the biggest achievements that I've noticed lately is that politicians and government organisations want to hear what we have to say, and they're interested in what we have to say as stakeholders. I think that's something that's taken a long time to achieve, and I think they really want to hear from us and they take notice.
It's just phenomenal to be able to provide that bridge for the more radical actors who really are, fronting up to democracy and saying, you are not good enough, you remain not good enough, you need to be better, and we are going to be in your face and we're going to challenge you about this. And they continue to do it, and we'll continue to support them doing that. That's what we're here for. That's what others who do the work that we do don't necessarily do.
I think there is still a need for organisations like this with that broad ambit. The immediate attraction of Civil Liberties was that it was an organisation focused on the absolute basics of a decent democracy.
There always have been social movements that have been necessary to bring change about, but Civil Liberties has been there, particularly in the courts and in public discussion, defending the rights of people, and I see that as very important.
We won't deride you, we won't tell you to be less radical. We will support you in every way that we can as you continue to do that.
Yeah, but the fact that I've remained interested is I haven't given up. What else?